Welcome to GWRI 101, The Writer Within, from the Union Institute and University. The title of today's video is The Person to Whom You Are Talking Matters. If you walk into a room and you hear someone crying, you know that you need to act. But you need more information before you can act. If it's the baby, you know you need to pick her up, check her diaper, and determine if she's hungry. If it's your toddler child, you need to talk to him to figure out what happened. If it's your teenage daughter, you have to decide whether you should talk to her now or later. If it's your wife, you need to take the worry off your face, then go into the room, put your arm around her, and hold her. If it's your best buddy, you need to run and text him from your car. How you act in certain circumstances is affected by the people to be addressed. It's no different in writing. Your audience determines how you write. If you're writing a children's book, your language will be different than if you're writing a book for adults. If you're writing a story for adults, your tone will be different than if you're writing a book about facts. If you're writing a piece arguing a point, your words will be different than if you're telling a joke. Unit 5 deals with audience and the various tones that correspond with each audience. A writer needs to know the people to whom he is writing before beginning his work. In addition, Unit 5 deals with third-person writing. Third-person writing. Third person is writing in the objective domain. When writing stories in the third person, you tell the story from the viewpoint of a narrator who's telling the story. When writing an academic paper in the third person, you make your points by arguing objectively in the third-person tone. Let's define the third person. First person uses the pronouns I, we, our, us, and me. Second person uses the pronouns you, both the singular you and the plural you, and yours. And third person uses the pronouns he, she, it. Don't say those three too fast or you get in trouble. He, she, it, they, and them. In third person writing, you avoid using the subjective first person words, the I's, the me's, the we's. You avoid using the subjective first-person words and replace them with the objective third person. Let's look at some examples of good third-person writing in stories. Tom looked carefully around the corner before proceeding to his car. Instead of using first person, my name's Tom, I looked around the corner to see what was happening. We made it into a third-person sentence. It was a dark and dreary night, which added to the apprehension. Third person instead of, I was a little bit scared when I looked around that corner. It was noted that glass was everywhere, on the street, on the grass, and on the victim. Third person, just showing it from a third person point of view. The ground shook, split open, and devoured the little animals into its core. We also can use third person in academic papers. The author seemed to believe that all people are good and that all things are possible. Instead of saying, I think the author's belief is, you just say the author believed that way. Data from 2009 indicate that the financial situation will only get worse. Third person. The price of art was rare, desirable, and priceless. Talking about an it, art. The main character, he, she, or it of the play was boring, thereby dooming the play from the start. Sometimes we want to write in the third person. Let's review the crying story from the beginning using the first person and then using the third person. In the first person, I walked into the house. I was immediately confronted by the noise of crying. I had to determine where the crying was coming from and who it was. It was Patty, my teenage daughter. I tiptoed towards her room, not knowing how to proceed. but the familiar song from the movie Titanic told me that I had nothing to fear. Those tears had already been shed 6 other times this month. First person story. Same story in the third person. The father walked into the house to the sound of crying. In an attempt to determine the directions of the cries, he tilted his head sideways. He had yet to determine its source. Before long, it became apparent that the noise emanated from the bedroom of his teenage daughter, Patty. A closer investigation revealed the final song from the movie Titanic. Dad's fears were allayed. 2 different ways of telling the same story, and they have different effects, and it all depends on the purpose of your writing. Week 5, you have only your forums, Forums 9 and Forums 10, and your week number 5 quiz. But start thinking about your paper that's due next week. There's no written assignment due this week, but remember that next week's story will have to be told in the third person. So as you are reading and looking through the videos for this week, start thinking how you can develop that technique, because you will use it in next week's story. When an actor is performing in a big open space, he must decide to speak loudly. If not, he won't be heard. When he's performing in a small room, he chooses to speak in a more moderate tone. If a microphone's available, he will adjust his voice to take advantage of the technology. Writers do the same thing. When writing, be aware of your audience. Adjust your tone to the audience. Use the appropriate writing style to meet the task at hand.